Alright, so today I want to show you 8 different reptile room hacks, 8 different things that you can do in your reptile room to make things a little bit easier, and maybe some tricks that you haven't seen before. I actually made a list of 8 different things I wrote down, and the first one on my list is something I haven't actually seen before until just this week. And take a look at this. This is olive oil. This is the real fancy olive oil. This is what I use up in my kitchen. And I actually was looking on YouTube some of the uses for olive oil, and believe it or not, some of the reptile guys, some of the snake guys, what they'll actually do with the olive oil is they'll rub it on their snake to eliminate a mite infestation, which I thought was probably one of the best things you can use on your ball python. So if you actually look at a lot of the mite treatments for ball pythons, a lot of times a lot of them are really toxic. There's one called the Reptile spray that is, it's actually safe enough where you can put it right directly on your ball python. But let me tell you, if you keep putting it on your ball python like day after day, multiple days in a row, your ball python can really get sick. I actually did that when I had mites here in my collection. I kind of overused the Reptile spray because I had a really heavy infestation of mites on my ball pythons. Now, let me tell you, with olive oil, you could probably, I would say, it's probably put it unlimited on your ball python, just lather it up. I wouldn't think there'd be any problems putting too much on your ball python too frequently to eliminate mites. So if you actually have mites in your collection, what I would actually try first is olive oil. Probably second would be something like the Reptile spray. It's kind of it's a little bit more toxic than olive oil, but it's probably the least toxic of all the treatments. And then you can also use like a provenamide, which you can spray on the substrate. But keep in mind, the provenamide is probably the most toxic. So you want to make sure that it completely dries on your substrate before you put your ball python back in your enclosure. Different treatments for mites. I thought olive oil was pretty amazing. So the second one I have on my list here is a water can instead of a pump-up sprayer. So when I first started in ball pythons, I actually was going through a whole bunch of different substrates, pretty much finally landed on a coconut husk substrate. And when I first started out, I used a little hand sprayer, the one you kind of squeeze in your hand really quick. And let me tell you, that takes absolutely forever. And then from that, I went to a pump-up sprayer, like one of the 2-gallon pump-ups where you just keep pumping it up. And then after it's pumped up and compressed, you just press the little handle on the lever and go through your whole collection and wet down your substrate to keep the humidity in your tubs like in a rack system. But the problem is as a matter of fact, I've actually seen a lot of big breeders still using the pump-up sprayer going through their collection. And I'd say if you actually just have like 3 or 4 snakes, it'll probably be okay. But if you get like 20 or more snakes, if you get like to the size of my collection, well, I have like 50 to 150 snakes here in my collection. Let me tell you, a pump-up sprayer is not very practical. I do not use my pump-up sprayer anymore here in my collection. And what I actually switched to is this little water can. I actually got it over on Amazon. I got a cute little pink one. They had a whole bunch of different colors over there, and you couldn't choose the color. They had like yellow and blue, and of course they were probably all pink over there when you order them. And I got this cute little pink can. Now let me tell you, this thing is a lifesaver. I can actually fill this up. I think it holds like a ½ gallon of water, and I can go through all my tubs. I can go through probably 100 tubs with this water can, adding the moisture to the substrate in probably maybe 10 minutes. Versus if I had a pump-up sprayer, it'd probably take me, I don't know, ½ hour, 45 minutes or something like that. This is so much faster to go through my collection with that little water can. That's probably the #1 time-saving thing that I've ever done here in my reptile room. All right, so number 3, use a paint scraper for the bottom of your snake tubs. So if you actually have a rack system like this, I pulled one out here. This is an ARS 5040 tub. It's a 50 series tub from ARS. There's 40 tubs per rack. It's just kind of, as a matter of fact, you can actually go on ARS caging and look at the dimensions. There's a whole bunch of different dimensions of tubs. And when I first started in ball pythons, I was just using a paper towel and wiping out all the substrate and kind of spraying it down, getting it out as much as possible. But the problem is the snake actually has 2 different types of manure. It kind of has like the dark stuff that you can wipe out real easy, and then it has the white urates. And the white urates can really get stuck on the bottom of a tub. It's almost like cement where it gets cemented on. And when I first started, they were really hard to get off, and I actually found a YouTube video that used a spoon, a metal spoon, to get off the yurts, and that worked pretty good. And as a matter of fact, I still use the spoon, but the thing that's better than a spoon is to use a paint scraper, because it has a larger area that you can scrape along the bottom of the tub. And let me tell you, the paint scraper, it scrapes out all the substrate and the urates and everything all at once. And then you can kind of go back in with the metal spoon and hit the corners and stuff like that. But let me tell you, that paint scraper is phenomenal, going through these tubs and scraping out all the waste from the bottom of the tub. All right, so number 4, using a colander for removing powder from the rodent food. So if you're actually breeding rats or mice and you're using like a rack system to breed your rats and mice, essentially what you do is you put like a pelleted food in the back of your rodent racks. And I pretty much go with, I actually just pulled this out. I still have some food in here. This is what I use. I use a big tote like this, a big blue tote. What I do with that is I take one of the big 50-pound bags of Missouri 6F and I dump it into the tote. And then what I do is from there, I actually use a colander. I haven't cleaned this up or anything. This is like straight from the tote, pretty dusty. That stuff is super dusty. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of scoop up some of that rodent food and then I'll sift it with this. And then from here, I'll pour it into, I think you get these like, I think I got this like at the feed store, just a little scooper. You probably get them on Amazon.com. And then from this, I actually fill up all the trays in the back of the tub. But let me tell you, it really cleans out all the fine powder from your rodent food, versus if you actually just take this rodent food, dump it directly into the rodent racks, all the powder falls inside of the tub and you end up wasting all that. You really get the tubs really dirty from all the powder. And sometimes these can have a lot of powder in the bags, depending on how it was really handled in shipping to move the bags of rodent food around. All right, so the colanders really helped me a lot. So number 5, use the rodent food powder to breed doobie roaches. That's one of the things I've done here in my collection. So when I first started using the colander and taking all the powder from the bottom of the rodent food, this is like 100% complete diet for your rats and mice. It's really all they need. Of course, I do supplement a little bit on the side with like some table scraps and stuff like that, but the rats and mice can live on this 100%. And a lot of times you'll actually get a whole bunch of powder in the bottom from kind of clearing it out from the colander. And initially, as a matter of fact, for the first probably year and a half, I was just throwing all that powder in the trash because I didn't really have a use for it. And some people said you can actually take a little bit of water, mix it with the powder, and kind of form like a block from the powder and the water and let it dry and then feed it to your rodents. And I thought, man, that's just too much work. For the amount of powder that's in the bags, it wasn't really worth it. But what I actually found out, I started breeding dubia roaches for my tarantula and my Pac-Man frogs, and I feed some of my dubia roaches to my chickens and my ducks, and I sell some of them online, sell some to the pet store, and they will eat 100% the powder from the rodent food, which is like 100% diet for dubia roaches, which is pretty crazy. I've been breeding dubia roaches for, I'd say, maybe 2.5 years now, maybe, and they go crazy over this stuff. It's the only thing I feed them, and they do fantastic on the powder left over from the bottom of the rodent food. As a matter of fact, when I run out of powder here, I'll actually grind up some of the rodent block pellets to make more powder to feed to my dubia roaches. This stuff is fantastic to feed dubia roaches, so that is another hack too. All right, so number 6, this one's kind of interesting. I actually just recently discovered this, is you can actually show a snake a movie on your phone to tame them down. I actually did a video where ball pythons, believe it or not, they're kind of mesmerized by watching television. I've seen a lot of people where they'll let their snakes kind of roam around the house and they'll come up to the television and get just like mesmerized, like in a trance, and just sit there for hours and hours and watch television. And it's kind of interesting, just this week I have 2 hatchlings from last year that are not really that friendly. I'll pick them up and they'll seem a little bit skittish. And what I actually did this week is I went on my phone and started playing some videos on YouTube on my phone, and I just put it up on my rack just to kind of support it. And then I took the Ball Python hatchling, put it up to my phone, and the snake was starting to watch that movie, and it seemed like within just a couple minutes that snake really tamed down and really started crawling around. Like it was almost like the video on my phone tamed down my snake, and it became a lot more friendly. I don't know if that's a fluke, but it'd be kind of interesting to take a really aggressive ball python that just snaps at you like crazy, put it in front of like a phone or a TV, and then play just a short little clip of a movie and see if that'll really calm down the snake and snap them out of their aggression, which I thought, and man, if that actually works with some mean snakes, it'd be pretty amazing. I just kind of randomly stumbled into it this week, which is pretty amazing. So number 7 is my humidification for my reptile room. And I kind of want to take the camera and I want to show you my setup for my humidification system, my humidifier, and my monitor and everything like that. And then I want to show you my really big reticulated python, and it's kind of the cardboard that I put on one end that I use kind of as a feeding tray for my reticulated python. So let's jump over and check out my humidification system. All right, so take a look at this. This is my newest thing here in my reptile room. That is my humidification system. And this thing is awesome. Probably the best thing I ever added to my reptile room. And I think for the first probably 3 or 4 years, I was actually using one of the small little 1-gallon humidifiers. I started out with the mist type humidifier and then switched over to like a wicking type humidifier. And with either one of them, I couldn't get enough humidity in the air to really make a difference in this little 200 square foot reptile room. And I finally went with this. This is actually, it's as a matter of fact, this is an evaporative cooler. Technically, it's not a humidifier, it's a cooler, and it's pretty big. I think this was like about $300 or something like that. But let me tell you, it is well worth it. And essentially what it does is it pulls up the water from a reservoir on the bottom and then trickles it down through these pads on the sides and in the back of the humidifier. And then it actually pulls air through, so it evaporates all the air from these pads. And essentially it's set up as a cooler. So if you take this and you put it outside, it would act as a cooler, like an air conditioner. But if you don't have constant dry air pulling through the humidifier, then it acts just as a humidifier instead of a cooler. It doesn't really cool the air down, which is pretty amazing. And then this on top, this is actually, this is a water reservoir from my rodent rack. And the cool thing about this is you can see the water level. So I just add a little bit in here, and then it comes down, and then it has a little lever and a float that automatically adjusts the water down there. And it's pretty all automatic. And then I have this hooked up to a humidity controller over here. So this is my controller. I set it to, right now it's set to 52% humidity, and then it fluctuates. It'll go down like 5%, and then it'll kick on and go all the way up to 52% humidity, which is, it's pretty awesome. And when I first started this, I set it to, I think I had it set to pretty much run full time, and it was running about 68%, almost 70% humidity in here. And it was way too much because the whole house was so humid. I mean, had like water streaking down all the windows, but the snake sheds were really good. So then I wanted less humidity in the house, so I actually dialed this down to 50%. And just recently I had some snakes that kind of had a rough shed right at the end, so then I moved it up to 52%. We'll see where that is. I'm slowly increasing the humidity in the reptile, and all I have to do is come over here and just hold set and then change the value and then increase it a couple degrees. It's really super easy. And then on here I actually have this is the probe right over here that measures the humidity in the room. So I have the probe all the way over here that controls the whole humidifier over here. And if you're wondering what these plants are, everyone's like, what are those plants over in the corner? Those are actually a couple papaya trees that I planted from seed over here in my reptile room. And you probably saw this, my tarantula just shed. It's a giant Brazilian whitey, just shed out. She's a big female. Really beautiful, and she definitely bites. You don't want to stick your hand in there. And those are my roaches too, the ones that eat all the powder from my rodent food, which is kind of crazy. So this has been working really fantastic. Probably the best thing I ever invested in was the humidifier that's on the digital controller that I can precisely control the humidity here in my reptile room. So from here I want to jump over and show you the kind of the little cardboard feeding tray I made for my reticulated python that's been working fantastic. All right, so here is reptile room hack number 8, and that is just a piece of cardboard on the end of my reticulated python enclosure. So if you've been watching my videos over the last couple of years, I've been trying to figure out the best substrate for this reticulated python. I went from paper, I went to a bare substrate. As a matter of fact, at one point I was using beach towels, and people were like, you better be careful of beach towels because potentially a reticulated python could eat the towel and it could potentially kill your snake, which I didn't know until I started posting videos about, hey, look, this is like the best thing ever using a beach towel, because if they go to the bathroom, you just wash the beach towel and reuse it, and it's just like a free substrate, although it does have some dangers. And I went to paper for a while and just like a bare bottom, and it seemed like the one that I keep coming back to is a coconut husk chip that the snake really enjoys being on. And it's kind of funny, if you actually have like a paper substrate in here, she'll go to the bathroom like every 4 to 5 days and really mess up the tub, and then it really just stinks. The paper really can't keep up with it. And then you're always moving the snake back and forth, and the snake just doesn't really like to be moved that much in a lot of cases. So I actually went back to coconut husk, but the problem is with the coconut husk is when she grabs a rat, she'll get a mouthful of coconut husk all in her mouth, and it's really uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, at one point she really hurt her mouth and it was kind of swollen up like around her gums and everything. So then I went back to paper and kept going back and forth to the other substrates. Finally went back to the coconut husk because it seems like what she absolutely loves. And then I put this piece of cardboard right at the end, which is fantastic because now I can actually put the rodent right on the cardboard. You can see she's actually wanting another rodent. She's got her head right on the cardboard, and I just put a big rat in there, and she'll eat it right on there without getting any substrate in her mouth. And this is fantastic, especially since reticulated pythons tend to pee a lot, and she'll pee in here like sometimes every 3 to 4 days, which is kind of crazy. And then if you just have paper or something like that, you're always chasing the mess. Versus if you have her on this coconut husk, she can actually go probably about 2 weeks, and she'll pee a little bit here and there, but this will like completely absorb it all and will absorb all the smell from all that pee, which is pretty awesome. So it's less work for me, and she really prefers to be on this coconut husk substrate. One of the things I found, you can definitely tell she's like keyed in. I'm gonna feed her probably one last rat here, and then she'll be done pretty much for the month. She's eating a whole bunch of rats, and she's getting pretty fat. I'd say she's probably ready to go back into a shed here pretty soon. Then I have a little water bowl over here in the back, like a big, I think it's like a 3-gallon water bowl in the back. But the other thing about this coconut husk I noticed that she really doesn't like is it produces a lot of humidity. So what I do is when I change the coconut husk, I change it like every 2 weeks. So when I change the coconut husk, I'll turn on a little fan. I have a little fan in the back that sucks out a little bit of air from the back. I'll turn it on high, and it'll suck out a lot of the extra humidity for the first 2 days, 2 or 3 days, and then I'll actually turn it down to just the very low setting for the humidifier, the fan on the back of this, to where it pulls out a little bit of the humidity so it doesn't get too humid in there. I don't think this snake really likes a really high humidity when it comes to reticulated pythons. I know they do like some when they're going through a shed, but if they get too high of a humidity, I know they can kind of get respiratory infections, so you have to really be careful about that too. So that's kind of one of my hacks, just this little piece of cardboard right at the end of the enclosure. Works especially well for these really big reticulated pythons, and it seems like, especially if you have them on like a coconut husk substrate, any kind of a loose substrate that they can accidentally get in their mouth. So that is pretty much it for my hacks. This is a really beautiful snake. One of these days I'm going to take her out and weigh her again. She probably weighs, I'd say, probably last time I weighed her she was 85 pounds. She's probably close to about 100 pounds now. She's a pretty awesome snake. Coming up on 5 years old. She's really beautiful. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.